I wanted to talk about the BoF article that we wanted to discuss. So I'll let you intro and kind of just share some thoughts about that.
Yeah, there are these articles on Business of Fashion that they're discussing about what are the consumer, what they want to predict, what the consumers will focus on in US, UK, and also the market of Asia, because the market of Asia is very different. So what was interesting in that was that very often innovation comes at the very end. I was very surprised to see that. They talk a lot about exclusivity, but exclusivity, what does exclusivity actually mean? You know, it's an interesting thing to discuss also in a luxury brand, what we define as exclusivity. And then they were talking about craftsmanship, and another thing was what was the craftsmanship? Timelessness, which also surprised me because for young people to talk already about timelessness instead of being, excited about new things, it's a little bit oldish, I would say. Like you go to buy clothes, you say, I want it to be timeless. I want to wear this forever. I mean, for me, this is far-fetched. You see what I'm saying? It's and yeah, and another thing that surprised me were that they were talking about consumers are not that much interested in clothes, but they feel that jewelry it's more interesting in terms of investment and also in the sense that with time it doesn't lose, it doesn't get destroyed, which I completely
Yeah.
disagree because with clothes it's the same. I mean, good clothes stay for a very long time, and actually they can be a better investment if they're archival pieces or like significant bag. So it's more the perception that people have about that, about jewelry. I was very disappointed to read that people are going to focus more on jewelry because they say, I can buy some basic stuff, some simple things, a small closet, and then I can style it with jewelry. And I'm like, okay, this, I guess it's the same thing again where people are not that. I don't know why this is happening. Like, why the problem is that people are focusing more on accessories than clothes themselves. Is it the industry that creates that problem itself, or is it like the lack of education, or is it?
I
It's
think
for
that's part
me.
of it,
Yeah,
like a lack of education. I think that's definitely part of it. I think even so, one of the big reasons why there'll be a bigger focus on, let's say, jewelry than clothing is because of
yeah.
like care. So a lot of people don't know how to care for their clothing. So because of it, they might not see like clothing as much of an investment as jewelry, even though it should be. If you take care of your clothing, it should last 100 plus years. But a lot of people don't
Oh
know how
yeah.
to care for their clothing. They put it in a dryer instead of air drying it. Some things you shouldn't even put it in the washing machine. You take it to the dry cleaner. It's like people don't really know these things.
I find it so baffling that something that we use all the time, like dressing ourselves, that people are so clueless about where they're putting on their bodies and how they should treat this kind of items. It's very surprising to me. Like when you buy a car, you know how to maintain it. Why can you not maintain when, like, or where, I don't know, when you buy an electrical device or things for your house, but then for clothes, somehow you have no idea of what you should do with. I mean, where is this coming from? Like, it's so surprising, but where is this coming from? I don't know where is this coming from. Why with clothes? There is such a particular thing that like people won't think that they and what is this thing again with investing? Like this argument that I want to buy something so that but we don't buy things only for investing reasons. We buy things for so many reasons.
Agreed.
It doesn't make sense to me at all. It shows like a kind of collective consciousness where all people agree on the same thing without thinking for themselves and they end up saying the same thing. But if you truly sit and discuss with them, they might realize that actually what they're saying doesn't make any sense. So that was very interesting for me to see. Sorry. They're losing their confidence in the quality of clothing. They don't have the same trust, which I mean, this I understand is very true. Sometimes it can be very disappointing, and brands should be careful on that. But then that innovation goes at the very bottom. Maybe for Asians it was different. They're very interested in creativity. And actually, you can see that they're interested in creativity by the things they choose to wear. Asians are much more informed as compared to Europeans, I would say.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they want premium. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about exclusivity. I don't know, what do you think? What do you think should be exclusivity for a luxury brand? What should it mean?
I just think exclusivity should just mean like there's certain things where financially it doesn't make sense to make because the price point is too low. So I don't expect Zara to make a super high quality 100% silk piece because if for Zara to sell that kind of thing, they'd have to sell a jacket for thousands of pounds, which is not the market expectation from a brand like Zara. So that's kind of what exclusivity should be. It is quite exclusive based on price point. If something is like $5,000, there should be a reason why it's $5,000. Other than just the brand, it should be the techniques that they've used to make it, the fabrics that they used to make it. So I think that should be the exclusivity, or just like having access to certain silhouettes or certain cuts. There's exclusivity in that too. But it all comes down to price point and like money and like earnings and stuff like that. A polymarket CEO, eventually the goal is the financialization of everything. It seems to be the case. Like that's where luxury is heading in general. I think education is also massive because the manner in which jewelry is discussed historically is like an appreciating asset, but garments are seldom spoken in such manner. 100%. Like, can you imagine? Like, I'm not sure if you guys know who Kerry Taylor is. Let me show you guys who Kerry Taylor is. Kerry Taylor is a woman that does these like really big auctions in fashion for like archive clothing, but like really hard to find archive clothing. And she's like really famous in fashion. She's written books on John Galliano, stuff like that. But so she does like these crazy auctions all the time and finds like all this like really rare stuff. And that's the thing, like all this clothing is an investment. Do you mean to tell me that if you buy like a Mathieu Blazy Chanel piece now, that it's not going to be worth insane amounts in 60 years? Of course it will be. Like if you just think of any designer that's like somewhat iconic now, in 60 years, their clothing is going to be worth a lot of money, like loads of money. So yeah, it is very true that it's strange that people think of like jewelry and stuff as an investment piece, but not like clothing. It's kind of strange. It is kind of strange. I think exclusivity being attractive to our generation definitely comes from having pieces of value that you can legitimately point to being hard to access and acquire. Yeah, and that's why I'm like, it's already exclusive because a lot of this luxury clothing is super expensive. It's not really affordable. So that's already exclusivity by default. So I don't think there's necessarily like any distinct need to go out of your way to kind of try and make it more exclusive. It's like the jackets are 10K. It's already, it's like exclusive already. Like that's just what it is. That's the reality of what it is. I'd also love to know how many Gen Zs were actually interviewed for the study, because the idea of exclusivity to Gen Z is very different given how accessible high fashion has become. I agree, because even like when we talk about the corporatization of fashion as a whole, that all started mainly in the 90s. That was like a 90s thing where he started like vertically integrating all the stuff that he makes with LVMH. He started to focus on, you know, different accessories to make money. He started building out the fragrance lines of a lot of the LVMH companies. So that's a good point. Kind of the way that we relate to exclusivity and like for Gen Zs is very different to how it was before. Clothing is wearable art. Like art, it can appreciate and will depending on its rarity. Totally, like someone that gets it. We love someone that gets it. But I think that's just down to education. Once again, if people aren't really educated on, you know, fashion or kind of how fashion clothing appreciates. Because yes, if you buy a Dior polo, it's not going to appreciate. That's not exclusive. But if you buy a J.W. Anderson tailcoat from the runway, then yes, it's going to be exclusive. And that's the kind of thing that we'll appreciate. Even, I'm talking about 60 years. In 10 years from now, it will be like worth more than the retail price. Like 5 years even. There's top-down exclusivity like Chanel price hikes, and there's bottom-up exclusivity born on the bandwidth for craft products from master makers. The top-down feels like a status/class game. Yeah, agreed. And bottom-up feels more honest in accessibility. Yeah, when it's about the only way that you can access a certain level of craft is if you pay for that craft, essentially. Agreed. And like maybe the only true exclusivity is haute couture. Yes. I mean, so many people. So the thing about ready to wear is like, even people that work in fashion, there's still like a level of exclusivity. Like I've never been to an haute couture show before. Not because I'm not invited. I do get invited to them. But the problem is I can't justify staying in Paris for haute couture shows because it's just not that many people care about the coverage of haute couture shows. So it doesn't make sense for me to pay money to stay in Paris longer when the coverage is not going to be worth it, like what I get out of the coverage anyway. So there's so many people that work in fashion that haven't even seen haute couture pieces up close. I've seen a lot of couture pieces up close, but that's because I work with a lot of museums and stuff, and I've gone through whole collections that museums have. But in terms of like access, yeah, it's a haute couture is like super exclusive, super exclusive. Said, but he can afford to stay on a yacht in high school. The yachts I was on in high school are not my yachts. Those were my really rich classmates. They weren't mine. That's funny. I think people think about the Hermes Birkin as exclusivity. So the problem with that, because obviously the Birkin, there's all these stories that come out of like how much it costs to even get like a Birkin allocation and like all this sort of stuff. However, I think so many people wear Birkins now and so many people can just buy it on the secondhand market. It doesn't seem exclusive. There was a time when there were so few in circulation that even if you had loads of money, you still kind of had to play the game. Now, if you're a billionaire, you don't have to play the game. You just reach out to someone that already has the bag you want and you just offer them an amount of money they can't refuse. Exclusivity, if we're talking about the top level of exclusivity, should be the kind of thing that money can't even buy. Like, it's so exclusive, even if you have all the money in the world, you still don't have like access to it. That would be like the ultimate level of like exclusivity, if that makes sense. But I don't think the Birkin is exclusive in any way. I just don't really see it that way. But like, let me play you a video via Amy Odell that kind of illustrates what I'm talking about.
You spend in the store before they sell you one of those?
Oh my gosh.
Let's say like
Year.
25,000 in a year.
In a year, probably $100,000, I'd say.
I think
On
it's
average.
$60,000.
On average, 1 million.
1 million? I just don't understand some of this stuff. And I guess, you know, that's always going to be like a non-rich person saying like, I don't get it. That's only for... But I do think it's Emperor's New Clothes because this isn't even a cute house.
It's status symbol. But then the bag
Yeah.
itself, it's not like the bag costs $1 million. The bag is like $30K. But they make you
Oh,
spend.
okay. No
It's
problem.
for some reason so rare and desirable that they make you spend on average $1 million.
Wow.
Wow, that is
they'll sell it to you.
absolutely bonkers.
That's bonkers.
I
There
know.
are hungry people in the world. Who cares? Get me a house bag.
How much do you think they make?
But yeah, so the problem with the way Hermes does it, it feels artificial. It doesn't feel like exclusivity because it's actually it just feels like they've artificially created scarcity. It doesn't actually feel like it's that hard to get. It's just artificial. So it doesn't feel genuine. A mil for a bag that looks like a store is crazy. I personally, I always say this, I don't really like the design of Birkin bags. I don't get the hype. I don't understand it. I don't get it. But each to their own. But I don't understand like jumping through all those hoops for a bag that like the design isn't that interesting, to be very honest with you. But okay, the purchasing experience is what is exclusive there. If we can expand beyond product, then in fashion, exclusive is experience. I think that's a good point to bring up. Like there's exclusivity based on like the experience you have buying into like a certain brand and stuff like that. I can definitely agree with that. Her Luke says it's called manufactured scarcity. Yeah, that's what I said. So we are talking about what the expectations of new luxury consumers is. So in 2026, what are the expectations of luxury consumers? And we're just talking about this randomly because there was a big BoF article that came out last month that was kind of talking about the expectations of new luxury consumers. So we kind of just off the back of that wanted to have a conversation around kind of what do luxury consumers expect? What do things like exclusivity mean these days in luxury fashion? Kind of just really exploring those kind of themes. So yeah, that's what we're talking about. Okay, Dami says, I have a theory. Hop onto the live stream and share your theory. I'm curious to know what your theory is. I'm very curious. Yeah, I spoke about this on Instagram, but I haven't spoken about it on stream. But because I guess this kind of ties into like luxury and like luxury markets. But it seems like a lot more legacy retailers are all going bankrupt. I mean, the Essence thing happened. They managed to come back. There's a lot I need to say about that. There's like what happened to Barney's. Obviously, you have Saks, you have Matches Fashion. So I think just in general, I think luxury retail as we know it is moving less into and more online. I think that's just a symptom of living in an online economy more so than anything else, to be honest. I think we crave exclusivity as everything is being duped and ripped off. In addition, one wants to feel like you are part of the brand and a true lover. Fair enough.
So coming back to that report on this younger generations, I was disappointed on certain things, but I don't know if older generations are a little bit the same in a way, you know. I don't think older generations are that much interested in innovation and creativity either. I think
Right.
creativity really goes at the very end. So It's so surprising to me. I think we live at a time where creativity is not given much importance, and this has to do with so many political and other aspects in our lives today. I was even
Mm,
discussing with somebody and was saying that people today dress in the easiest way possible because maybe they get so overstimulated by the environments we live in. There is all the time stimuli. There is no really time to breathe. So they don't want to what they're going to put on themselves. So it might like an explanation for why people dress like that today. Might be partially at least. They don't want to bother much paying attention on an extra thing
yeah.
because everything is going so fast. And the Lagerfeld once had said, the day you start wearing joggings, it means you gave up on life. And somewhere this is true. I believe part of it is true. When you give up on how you present yourself to the world and becomes too, I don't know, careless about it. Somewhere part in you,
Yeah.
it has given up on this. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm not
Yeah.
sure I'm explaining it in the right way, but yeah, it reflects that. So, of course, then creativity and innovation. I mean, especially when I hear timelessness, like nothing is completely timeless. Like, to be honest. So there are different eras and
Do you
different
know what's
trends.
what's funny about what you said, Anastasia? Sometimes when
Hmm,
people say timeless, I
hmm.
think what they mean is a specific aesthetic. Because when
Yes,
like now people say what they claim as timeless is actually like a quiet luxury aesthetic. But it's like nothing is really timeless because even within that quiet
exactly.
luxury aesthetic, it's like, okay, what is the silhouette of trousers? Is it straight? Okay, at some point, people might think it's more timeless to have wider fitting trousers. At some point,
Exactly. This
it
is
might be more
changing.
timeless to have
Yeah.
slimmer. So I actually think even the idea of like timeless clothing is actually just like a trend or it's like an aesthetic in itself.
Yeah.
Hi guys, can you hear me clearly?
Hello, yes, we can hear you.
Hi.
Hi Anastasia. I'm Damilare, or you can call me Dichi. One of the two. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Go on, let's share your theory with. This is the article, by the way, for
The
guys that are
theory
watching. Yeah.
is luxury fashion is rethinking its value to shoppers.
Mm.
So this is specifically about the retail experience, right? This is a conversation that's been happening for the past 5 years. I didn't read the article. Could you make me abreast of the situation that like a couple of the key points that they made before I say what I want to say?
Anastasia will be best to tell you.
Yeah, so this article is talking about what they are projecting for fashion in 2016, the near future, and they're saying that consumers are a little bit reluctant on. Yeah, there is also this interesting graph, which it's saying that mega brands didn't do that well compared to established and emerging brands, which I don't know how they distinguish which one is considered as in like mega brands would be the Louis Vuitton, Chanel, and or I guess so, right?
Yeah. So
And
in the graph, they
established would
said
be,
that
yeah,
emerging brands have less than $300 million in annual revenues. Established brands have 300 million to 3 billion in revenue, and then global mega brands are the ones that have greater than $3 billion in revenue, essentially.
do we know which of these brands? It must be like
So yeah, more than 3 billion
Chanel.
revenue. That would be like Chanel, Hermes, Louis Vuitton,
Yeah.
Gucci. There's very
Yeah,
many brands.
I was surprised to see that as well, but the mega, I don't know how to translate that. Maybe I misunderstood that they were not doing.
Wait, sorry,
But
not
it
to cut you off,
okay,
Anastasia.
let me tell you overall. It said basically that the consumer is reluctant because of the quality. They don't want to invest that much in clothing, and probably that will continue in 2026. And then because the same dropped, and then they see it as more interesting to invest in. And we had that debate with jewelry and why people get so attracted. The argument is because you can invest in them and they don't get destroyed, over time, which is the same for clothing if they're in good quality. So yeah, it was more about that, this article. And the other one was about what I told you, the different categories. You wanted to talk about that, or you wanted to talk about the other one, innovation being really bottom?
I wanted to speak about the new and growing consumer psychology and how
Yeah,
luxury is trying to wrap its claws around that essentially. So, we
yeah,
all know who Tana Leverstein is and everything like that, and what people know now about quality and about the quality of particular items. So part of that is actually the growing grey market. So the grey market is anything that's resold by, person to person rather than retailer to person, essentially. And those have just as high, if not close to the same markup as the originals. So to say is that if a Dior saddle bag goes for 1K, it doesn't, but let's just use that as a round number.
Yeah.
Then someone could sell their 2002 saddle bag for like 800 or 700. But this is the thing, right? That bag has provenance. The reason why that bag has provenance is because one, it's got a higher quality. Two, it's got a richer history than the newer one. And people like the history and the story that's being told because they understand quality more. Now, when I'm saying that, yeah, I understand that there is a smaller market for that, essentially, when it comes to, you know, people who are just a general luxury customer who would rather, instead of researching, just go into the store and buy something, right? And they want this one-off item, which it goes on to my second article, right? Which is like, luxury does want the highest markup on their particular items. So because they know that their most coveted items are people's, in quotes, grails, when I see girls today, they want to buy a saddle bag, for instance, or they want to buy, you know, a Kelly, they're going to the grey market. They aren't going to the retailers because one, you get better treatment in the grey market, and two, the grey market has a lower price point and they know that that thing is quality. What do you guys think of that before I go on to my next point?
I think it's a great thing because it, you know, everything is used again and has a second life. I think it's a great thing. I don't see any problem with that, and you can find very interesting items, and it's a great market. I don't see, you know, I don't see it as problematic. On the contrary.
Yeah, I think
What do you
that's an
think?
economy that the brands created themselves, no? Because it's like, I know so many people that say, I wouldn't buy a new Chanel bag because the quality isn't good enough, but I'm looking for a Chanel because, you know, when they used to use like the actual
That's better.
plating on the hardware and like the leather quality was better. So people are actually seeking out past Chanel bags over modern ones. They'll rather pay more for a bag that's used, which is like crazy, but that's just kind of what it is. So I think the brands almost cornered themselves into like the rise of the grey market because they started cutting corners themselves. So not only is it easier to copy because it takes less components, it's less expensive to copy, it's also like it creates a certain level of like just desire for the old pieces that wasn't there before they started like operating that way.
Yes,
Which is great,
and
interesting, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, and that brings me to my second point, right? So, and you know this better than anyone because you love your perfumes and everything like that, right? They want the highest markup on their items that cost them the least. So that goes to perfume, that goes to
100%.
makeup, and all of the other ancillary things, which is why I think luxury loves this charmer market that has just blossomed and bloomed, right? One of the major reasons why is because the fact that people have the lower buy-in, and that's already blowing up, right? So when we look at the beauty numbers, for instance, and these companies trying to buy other beauty companies and them trying to create roll-ups, this is the market stating, or at least the companies understanding that beauty is becoming way bigger than they anticipated and faster than they anticipated. And the companies can't actually keep up with the demand. So some people are selling off their beauty spaces because they can't keep up with the demand. And two, the reason why those other companies want to buy it, company B wants to buy it, is because they know that beauty is rising and that they can, in quotes, cut corners or just create something that and rise that markup and rise that price point for the retail price for the consumer, because you know the consumer might not want the bag or be able to even afford the bag. But I know specifically, right, with the young girls that I know through, you know, the younger people that are in my audience, where it's like they start with the Dior foundation or the Dior lipstick or the Chanel lipstick, so on and so forth, and that already implants that luxury, or even like the little testers, right? So that implants that luxury item into their house straight away. And one of the other things is that some of these makeup ladies at these stores are some of the most nicest ladies that you can meet. So it's actually a whole different luxury experience than usual.
Right.
So now you're dealing with people that you like, so you're going to revisit them. Two, they get you know, whatever, they get a way smaller commission and they have to sell way more. So they need people to come back. And then the companies can, you know, maybe use less quality products or even the same quality, but just raise the prices. And I'm seeing that across the board in the whole retail market.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wonder what the chat's saying about that. So that's the
It's so
second point.
interesting that these big clothing brands end up selling everything else but clothing. So yeah, of course. I mean, the margins for makeup and perfumes are huge. That's where the biggest profits, I think, even much more than the accessories. Of course, it's your first contact with luxury, the cheapest way of. I mean, this is not really luxury in reality. It's not really luxury, it's just the name. Because makeup in itself is not luxury. There are many brands that,
You
besides
don't have to
the
pay.
Dior and all that, and it's not considered luxury if you go and buy, makeup brands that are just doing makeup and nothing else. So it's not really luxury, it's just this idea somehow having even we're talking about perfumes, even in perfumes there are categories like a perfume that is cheap for the average consumer, and then there are the more limited editions that are always much better, that are quite expensive. I mean, a Chanel perfume at the limited edition might cost you 400 euros.
Yes.
But so again, it's like for the very, very, this illusion of being part of luxury, which I don't know why people are so obsessed about luxury. It has to do somehow unconsciously must have something to do with self-esteem and how you feel about yourself. Because why do we need luxury and what does it really mean besides quality?
And
Because
that's
if I understand. Yeah, but if it's luxury, I mean, what do we mean by luxury and why are we so obsessed about,
this goes on to like my
And it's not
fourth
even
and
true
fifth
luxury.
point.
I can see Dammy is itching. He's about
She
to
can't
cook.
see me
But
because
go
there's a cover.
please.
Wait, let me read what they're saying. Grey market CDs for possible. Okay, yeah. So boom. All right. With that, so they like when I was saying they want to capture the psychology, because that's an absolutely phenomenal point, right? Is that what is even luxury in the first place? That's a great question for us. It is also a question that luxury is in quotes is answering for themselves, right? Shout out to Virgil. So what they want, one is the data for the people, because once the girls buy this makeup, what do? They want the text messages to know when the deals are on. They give their emails for when, a new online thing drops. They give their whole life is given to these companies. So now I know that this is, and then they know the shade of the makeup they bought. So now I know that this is a very dark-skinned black girl who is from, let's just say, the Kent area that buys makeup 3 or 4 times, within a year.
Yeah.
So then how many times can I add up this person to buy makeup multiple times or buy even more things? Because we'll only talk about gateway items, aren't we? And then, this person likes charms. So how can I really innovate in the charm sector? And when I say innovate, I really mean just give them more offerings. Because of course, if somebody buys makeup 3 or 4 times a year, you want to, or should I say foundation specifically, you want them to buy another item that goes along with the foundation. So you can tailor that to what they actually get. And they love that when the word luxury is used, that they are on top of mind. Because realize in this conversation, we've used the same 3 or 4 names: Dior, Chanel, Hermes, and Louis Vuitton. They love that. So they've already captured the psychology. For us, at least, they've captured the psychology, but they haven't for the young people. And then when you see, okay, people are talking great about Jonathan Anderson and all of these other things, like, I think we all know this, right? Where it's like they want to be, not just have the biggest shows, but the most talked about shows. So they care about the consumer metrics on that. And they love that they're on top of mind. But on the other end of that, they care about their actual consumers, right? And when that person grows with you, they can actually tailor that customer journey in terms of their email marketing and their SMS marketing and the relations with the makeup artist, and then switch that onto the perfume, so on and so forth. So yeah, because like when the Dior or even the Chanel advent calendars drop, those are special SMS messages that come through. Like, have you guys been on their like mailing lists and seen
of course.
how they advertise? Yeah. So I appreciate that, Leo. So with that, you see that they're changing their apparatus. So now it's not just, you understand that this thing is happening. You see the person on social media And now you feel special because when you told your friend, oh yeah, this thing is dropping, they didn't know this thing is dropping. So now you're on the inside. And now that's the luxury. The luxury isn't, oh, this item is well made and it's the highest quality from so and so places. It's like what they said, the scarcity, right? Is that they don't know. I know. I'm in the know. They're not in the know. And that is also part of how, we conduce, exclusivity, elitism, classism, whatever, gatekeeping. Bring gatekeeping back is a whole movement right now, right? And now people don't even need to gatekeep because they're the ones getting the direct messages and it feels special to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to know what everyone's thoughts is now. But yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of the chart on the screen? Someone in the chat said that Gen X is definitely lying about personal status and identity being last place in the order of priorities is a lie. That Gen X are lying about that. What do you think about that? I think it's also quite telling that just Gen X. What age is Gen X?
Yeah, no, just the age group. What's the age group again? I think they're like 50s, 60s or whatever it is.
Mid 40s to early 60s. Like 46 to 61 right now.
Yeah. They don't care about status. 60 years ago was that.
That would be a lie. Because
isn't
that the generation
they
that literally used to buy? Yeah, they invented.
I almost gave them the benefit of the doubt, but this is literally who it's for. Oh my days, that was hilarious. I can't believe that. I almost fell for the bait.
Because normally when they do surveys, it's not about the reality; it's about what your perception of your reality is.
Exactly.
So obviously, someone can survey me, and then I can say, yeah, I care the least about like using luxury or buying into luxury as a means to increase my personal status. But that's just what I'm saying. Someone observing me could be like, I feel like when you buy clothing, it's for personal status. So it's like, that's the thing about surveys.
Personal status and identity. But this is the thing, right? What is the status symbol like for them? With Gen X particularly, how I can interpret this data a little bit, and plus I don't have the raw data, I just have a graph, is that they want the actual wealth, not the display of it. Because actually having wealth is how you display it. So you, like, let's say having a nice car, a Maybach, for instance, isn't necessarily like, of course, that's your personal status or whatever it is. But at the same time, it's not necessarily your identity. Like your identity would be the person who takes a Maybach to pick their kids up from private school with a driver escorting you.
Yeah, I don't know. People saying that Gen X kind of their personal status is through assets. Maybe now, but like the reason why the fashion market exploded was because of them. They made it explode. Like, because the luxury fashion as a category exploded in the 90s. That was not millennials and Gen Z. That was Gen X.
Yeah.
Literally, that was Gen X.
Yeah.
But I think maybe it is actually true, because if we're talking, there's a difference between like what they did versus now. I think now Gen X probably get personal status from owning houses because Gen Z and millennials can't own homes.
How boring. Yeah.
So there's like stuff like that. There was a big conversation in the chat that I thought was interesting around the fact that innovation and design tends to be at the bottom of a lot of these lists. And it's quite indicative of the fact that, like, Anastasia, you said earlier that people don't like to experiment with the way that they dress. I think this kind of proves that.
Yeah. And there is this kind of, I was discussing with somebody today, a friend of mine, and I was like, why we have this hypocrisy around being discreet when it comes to clothing in particular? Like people want to be discreet, they don't want to show off, but wearing clothes and dressing up is part of it is expressing yourself, is not necessarily showing off. And why should we be discreet? Why being discreet is a quality? We know we live in times where, people have money and people don't. So I don't see why it's a provocative thing. Like you should be discreet. You shouldn't show are you going to offend the people that doesn't have money? If that's the issue, if this is like this thing of being discreet and not, this has to do, in my opinion, more with the fact that people function in a much more uniform way and they have lost somewhere their individual voice than showing off. Because if you're wearing jewelry, a Rolex, or if you're having an expensive house, you're not showing off. you're showing off, but in a different way. That's all.
Yeah.
It's not, and also
That's what I
clothing.
said.
We
I
should,
said they get personal status through like house ownership and stuff like that.
yeah, exactly. And I told you, very boring. I find this so boring that people, and they always start talk about like investment. I want to invest in something. I'm like, come on, like you all want to invest, but nobody wants to express. So it's like so oldish, So such a mentality that, like, to me, it's very stressful to know that I'm surrounded by people like that think of
Yeah.
this kind of way that, I mean, part of life is also expressing. If you don't have that need, for me, it's very problematic, And
Agreed.
creativity should be a part of every human's life, not investing in a house. Okay, but okay, I'm not saying you should be homeless and have a collection. I'm not saying that.
But you can also be
But
creative at the same time. Yeah.
I mean, and this labeling clothing, like if you're dressing well, it means showing off. No, it's not true. It's not true for
Hi, folks.
everybody. Hi.
Hello, Al.
Hi. Yeah, I think that what I wanted to come on here and say was
I'll
specifically,
just share the link you sent, Al.
yeah, before we get off the topic of innovation and design, I had a take about that I think is, I don't know, worth sharing. I think that the reason why that's ranked so low in terms of I guess, ranking, I believe in the survey they might have been forced to rank them versus just giving them like an individual score of how important they are, at least based
Yeah.
off the way the infographic had that displayed. I think that's to do with customer fatigue with the idea of innovation and disruptiveness as like a market force and a general cultural force because of the proliferation of micro trends on social media driven by algorithmically accelerated processes in which you have ballet core and then clown core and then all sort of things that sort of happening when people post Rona were so focused on experiencing fashion through a stream that was mediated by something that was economically incentivized to show you constantly new things, right? And the fact that like a lot of these trends weren't even lasting a season and such, there was nothing really to get invested and kind of ride along with and really internalize that as part of your fashion journey, or internalize like the aesthetics of such to like really have a marked impact on like the way that you consume that, plus like this general feeling of distrust of technology and how much it's disrupting our lives and the general economy. I think all that ties in to like why there's a distrust now of that specific language and the values that go along with that as a median level consumer, right? So that's my take on that.
This YouTube channel runs on your support. If you want to support the channel, you can subscribe to my Patreon. You'll gain access to exclusive content that includes everything from my Patreon podcast, where I give a behind-the-scenes insight into the fashion industry, as well as a fashion book club, where I review my favorite fashion books. You can also check out my fashion ebook, which highlights the best fashion journalists to follow, definitions of common fashion terminology, and how to determine what a good source of fashion information is. The links to everything are in the description below.